Hey guys, as you will know, Korean cinema is absolutely huge at the moment, especially following the success of the Oscar winning Parasite. But it's also the films of the director Park Chan-wook that have caused great celebration for this nation's cinema, with titles such as Decision to Leave, The Vengeance Trilogy, and The Handmaiden has made him one of the most popular world cinema directors out there at the moment. In his latest film, No Other Choice, he takes a comedic thriller approach to telling a anti-capitalist story. The film focuses on the character Mansu, who works in this factory that produces moon paper. However, due to competition, this factory is making redundancies, meaning his career there ends after 25 years. While he initially hides his unemployment status from his family, he knows he wants to work there because this is what he's done all his life. And he knows there will be new jobs there. However, it will be extremely competitive for him to get one of them. So he makes a decision to eliminate his rivals by killing them. However, he's not some inner serial killer. This is done awkwardly at the start because he feels he has no other choice. Now, this is obviously a metaphor for the dog-eat-dog post-capitalist economy, with people having to compete and go to extraordinary lengths for underpaid work. This is based on an American book that has already been made into a French film before. However, No Other Choice is very Korean and it adopts that approach. I understand from the Q&A I went to, he initially was going to make this an American, but due to financing, had to continuously delay it. And I think, A, it works better as a Korean film, and B, it is much more singing to our times than it would have 10, 15 years ago. While the film does contain a lot of violence, it's actually really comic in its presentation. It has this dark comedy to it, and it doesn't feel like something you need to cover your eyes because of the tone and the context. It is the violence is being undertaken. And he manages to create this great balance between the two themes. The film really explores effectively the role of the family in Korean society and his individual personal need to feel he has to provide for them, although his wife is actually not necessarily on the same page with him on that. There is something in the film about social status and maintaining it. So, for example, there's this common theme where he has troubling tooth and eventually he has to pull it out because he feels you can't go to the dentist without having a job. The film effectively explores one's decisions and how sometimes we can narrow them down to say we don't have a choice. So fundamentally, this is about him feeling he doesn't have a choice to other than remove the competition, which is not necessarily true. But in his mind, he has decided there is no other choice. And it's about how we often decide that we have no other choice and follow a particular path rather than being open-minded and exploring other options. On a rational level, he could, of course, got another job doing other things. However, he feels he deserves to have this sort of role and he has no other choice but to follow the actions he does. I think one of the most impressive things about this film is the score. There's a great synergy between the score and the young daughter. She is a cello player, but she never plays in front of her family. And you just have this sense that the family don't know how well she plays this cello, and they don't necessarily think she's particularly talented. And even when her teacher tells her, the parents, that she is extremely talented, they don't quite believe it until we get a sense of her abilities on screen. And this cello player is then interlinked with the score, and it's just done so beautifully. I think this is probably Park Chan-wook's most accessible film. I don't think it meets the level of The Handmaiden or The Vengeance Trilogy, but it's still a really great film and it explores some really interesting themes and it looks beautiful, really utilizing this family home and the scenery of their immediate city. I think if you're a fan of Park Chan-wook, this will go down as a decent film and it's got mainstream appeal as well. I think my only reservation for the film is it feels a bit messy and sort of before halfway. It feels it could have been edited down a bit and have these individual murders that he does sort of set out quite consistently. However, this is just a minor criticism because it's extremely watchable, but it could have been just under that 2-hour length rather than 2 hours 20, had it had a bit more of an edit. At the time of recording, this was obviously South Korea's official submission for the 98th Academy Award for Best International Feature Film Oscar, and it had been shortlisted into the final 15 list. I do not yet know whether it will make the nomination stage, but without embarrassing myself, I think it's just going to miss out. I think not because of the quality of the film, because this is potentially one of the Korean films that could make that final five. However, it seems like there's probably 4 or 5 titles that are just going to sneak in ahead of No Other Choice. And most of them are because they're getting nominations in other categories. And I'm not sure this one will particularly. Part of this is because Korea are not necessarily the most successful country at the Oscars compared to what they produce on an annual basis. And this is partly due to the way they choose films, what they choose, and they sometimes make poor decisions. So, for example, The Handmaiden was not submitted for South Korea. Yeah, so obviously they have won for Parasite, but that was their first ever nomination, and they've had no nominations since. They've appeared on the shortlist 3 times for Burning, Decision to Leave, and No Other Choice. So I don't quite think the Academy has quite grasped Korean cinema much outside the Parasite factor. However, I might have completely embarrassed myself in this video because after its launch, the nominations will be released, so I might be completely wrong. I think this is still a quality film, and I would give it 4 stars. If you like this video, please like it, and if you want more news and reviews for the Best International Feature Film Oscar category, please do subscribe to Global Film Pool. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see you again soon.